Hi everyone, AlcoBuff back here for a much needed update on my layout. I have not been standing still. First off, I've now got a third main line, something I've always wanted. If we look over here, this is where my yard entrance used to be. You can see the hint, there's the track, and the switch that used to go to the yard entrance right by my RSD15 there now goes across to the new third line, and the third line basically is composed of my old yard track, which is right over here. I'll move this engine house out of the way more, but that right there. And see, that's now the third main line. It goes all the way around underneath the tunnel and back here. I'll give you a tour of that in just a second. In the process of doing this too, I've had to relocate where the yard goes in. If you look over here, this is now the yard switch over here. It's a left switch, or right switch rather. Comes off the new secondary main line, the new third main line, I should say. Turns off, follows its way into a single switch. You'll also note that the siding that used to go back there and used to be this loop is now gone. That's because this track now goes around. There are several reasons why I did this. The main one being that this loop was kind of useless over here, because what would happen is if I had a train on the trestle above it, and I had a train coming across this, going through this loop, what would happen often is the train coming off the second track, which is the entry, or was the entry, that's changed too now, for the trestle, it would basically actually crash into the track. It crashed into the train that was on this track unless I was watching very carefully, so it was very difficult. And of course, because it took place right underneath there, and it's kind of hard to make out from here, it took place right underneath the tunnel, which is where the crossover was, or the track crossing, I should say, or diamond was. It was really difficult to figure out what was coming and what wasn't coming, and it was nerve-wracking. It was so bad that in many of my videos, most have probably noticed, I never ran this train. It just kind of sat here as it was sort of an ornamental piece. Sort of overgrown lawn ornament, if you will. The other loop here had its own problems. It shared its track again with this loop here to a certain extent. The switch was needed to get on and off it. That's not too bad. What killed it is that it was the yard, so often I had a train like I have now, one sitting in the yard, blocking it. Right now, actually, I don't have one sitting in the yard. They're both on the third line. So anyway, what I decided finally is I was going to do it the right way and get a third track in here. And so now I have a third track which does not interfere with anything else, and I'll show you how I did that in a second, but I'll start now. First of all, you'll note right here where all the supports are. If you remember before, the supports were a little bit more conjugal. They were kind of sitting right in the path of this track. What I had to do was relocate them. I moved these over a bit. There was one over here sitting right there. If you look at the hole, that had to get moved out. It was just too close for comfort. I had to get rid of that one. I could have sort of cleared it. In the end, I wound up clearing it after I did modifications. Then there was one, but still needed to be done. Then there was one right next to the switch, which wouldn't have worked because I had to get a switch in here to get the yard to work and a crossover. There was another support over here someplace that had to come out, but you can still see the hole. In fact, here is where it was. I had to take that one out, but I didn't need it as it turns out because this is now supporting it, and this is tied in very well, so there was no need for it because this now new Y that was put in after this part was put in is sort of supporting everything, and it's still rigid. As you see, the whole layout will shake before this bends, which is great. Anywho, after relocating that, I basically created sort of a passageway for the tracks to get through. Then I had to get the tracks to it. So what I did is from this point on, I ripped up the track, removed the staples, starting right beyond the switch here. Put the switch in, which was to get into the yard, and then I routed these tracks straight through, making a slight left turn off right over there, as you see. It's sort of a quarter turn I have in there, and it turns straight through, gets through the gap, and then makes a further left turn. Please note this is still in a very rough shape. I'm not quite done with it yet. A further left turn right over here, and it rejoins what used to be my yard track. And now from the yard track on, it basically follows that old path. What I did have to do was take what I call a kink out. There's one like this. There's still one over here, which I have to work on. But I have quick left and right action. In other words, two small half tracks together going one direction then the other. That's a great way of derailing a train going anywhere above yard speed, so I took that out. And then I continued around the track. Let me just go ahead and get back there so I can show you. Again, still moving stuff around here to make it more manageable. So now as we see back here is the yard. As again, I should also mention I'm doing major work in the yard. I'll get to that in a second. The train then basically goes around and continues on what used to be the yard track at this point. And then comes to this part right over here where I've added, you see the clue where I did things different. I put a small straight section, a half-turn section, another half-turn section. And then I joined this sort of line going through the tunnel, the new third line. And if we look in here, goes straight down in there. Oh, my camera light isn't working, pardon me on that. You can sort of make it out. It goes right down through the tunnel. I'll probably have to take another shot of this in a second. Anyway, it cuts through the tunnel, follows mostly the path of where the original smaller loop went. And also, as you can see, is that, see, it then runs around. Another interesting thing is where this Y used to be right over here. If we look underneath there, there used to be a Y right over here, right where that bumper is now. There used to be, the other loop used to come straight through, cross over here, and then come around again. What I've done now is I've gotten rid of all that, and instead of having it come around and divert off the second track, I've now made the hills or mountain division or mountain branch start off the new third track. The advantage of this, I don't have that Y anymore, and I can now run trains. It also gives the mountain a purpose, because the train now starts on the third track, comes up and around, and then comes back down again on the second track. As we see here, this is the trestle line right over here. It comes down here and actually winds up on the second track. So that's a pretty nifty thing. It gives me a use now for my mountain. Anywho, the track then continues all the way around through what it was originally there. This is still the original track put in the 90s underneath here. It's kind of hard to see what I've done, but if you look right here, this is the subterranean track that like it was. It's still hammered in place. It's going to stay like that. And it cuts all the way around and winds up back to where I started from. This may have seemed simple, and it did only take me a night to get it done, sort of roughed out. And I do mean rough because there were a lot of power problems when I was through with it. But it worked to a certain extent. Anyway, I've since then gone through several times. I've started soldering track. The yard entry is now soldered. I've got a lot more work to do on this. The yard entry right over here is now all soldered up. It's kind of hard to see from there. If you look down there, all that track is now soldered as it goes in. And basically that's how it works. So right now I'm still going to continue working on this, refining it. I'm having problems now getting the RST-15, for example, through that tunnel. So until I can get that working right, I'm going to have to keep modifying it. The problem, again, I have in the tunnel is I can't really staple the tracks down like I used to. What I'm doing now is I'm screwing the tracks down. I'm still working on that. Hopefully, within a certain amount of time, I can get it working the way I want it. Anywho, whenever I get to it, I'll get that done and up. And that's basically what I've been up to lately. The next project I'm going to get to after all this is done, I've already ripped apart my yard because it just wasn't manageable before. I've gotten rid of the engine house, which you see is sitting over here now. I'm going to take this dead line out that I used to use to store my deadline engines. That's coming out. I'm going to take switches and have them come straight off into the center and to the side and just really exploit the storage space I have and just really make this a much more functional yard. Then I'm also going to put more signals in and other stuff. So I've got a while to go here, but I think in the end it's going to be worth it. I now have 3, in short, independent train operations. Plus, this is another plus of doing all this work. I now have a 4th because these 15-inch tracks, I actually found you can get 15-inch turn tracks. I've gotten them with a set I'd bought. I put these in here, and I was able to actually get the original yard to work with one of the yard siding tracks. So now I have my 4th, so I can actually run a 4th train if I want, use the yard as that, and if I pull the trains off onto sidings. I'm going to make it now so I can put all of them there. So that's basically what I've been up to. I'll keep updating and let everyone know what's been going on here, and hopefully start to really get some trains running. They all run now, but it's very rough. I still have to work on electrical problems, but as soon as I get that ironed out, I'll go ahead and do another update video for you.